Hello, and welcome to the Brutal Iron Gym podcast, where our goal is to cut through the BS and deliver the brutal truth about topics related to health and happiness. Today's podcast is number 1374. The topic is mindset, and the title is 200,000 downloads improving long-term consistency. So sometime, hopefully the day that this podcast is available, the podcast total downloads will reach over 200,000. Now, if it hasn't reached that yet because of some fluke, I'm going to look like a butthead. But it wouldn't be the first time. So, sometime around this podcast, either on this day or tomorrow, hopefully the podcast will have reached 200,000 downloads. So, I think that's pretty cool. I've been incredibly blessed, and I love that this podcast is part of my life. The podcast has reached actually all 50 states in the United States, which is cool, and it's reached over 100 countries. I couldn't even name 100 countries. So that is pretty cool. And actually 30% of the listeners are from outside of the United States, which is never would have thought that when I started the podcast, that it would reach, as far as it has. I now have clients in 5 countries, which is crazy. And I have other countries where listeners, so thank you, will send in questions and emails. So it's been super fun to kind of hear from people all over the world that have listened to the podcast. And it blows my mind. So I'm very grateful, consider myself very blessed. And when I started the podcast, I actually started it for myself because I was going through a tough mental time. And a thing that I had learned from earlier in life from smart people was a way to help yourself. If you're struggling to help yourself, is to help someone else. If you help other people, you tend to feel kind of more value in your own self, and then it tends to show like, okay, I can give this person something that then makes their life better. Maybe I can do that for myself. So I was struggling at the time mentally and kind of like a depressed state of my life. So starting the podcast to help other people increased my self-value. And then that has, helped bring me out of that depression and really helped kind of create a much better life for myself now than when I started in pretty much every possible way. And I've been blessed that I've been able to do that while continuing to help everybody else. So getting to 200,000 downloads means essentially, somebody has listened to a podcast and it has helped their life 200,000 times. To me, that's amazing. And I'm very, very blessed. So part of making today's podcast, I thought to myself, like, okay, well, if somebody wants to learn why I started the podcast, they can listen to our 1-year anniversary podcast, which is podcast number 365. So it talks a little bit about why I started the podcast. And then I was like, well, that's interesting. Like, I wonder what I did for the 2nd-year anniversary. So the 2nd-year anniversary is podcast number 730. Yeah, so it's titled 2-year anniversary. And I talk about some of the lessons I learned through doing the podcast for 2 years. I then looked for the 3rd anniversary of the podcast and realized I didn't make one. So I just totally didn't realize that the day of the 3rd year anniversary was the 3rd year anniversary. I just kept going and just made a normal podcast. And that's kind of what I thought would be fun to discuss in today's podcast if we're looking at long-term consistency. The fact that I didn't even recognize that the 3rd year anniversary was the 3rd year anniversary, and I had to calculate and figure out what would be the number of podcasts for the 4-year anniversary, is part of what has allowed me to be long-term consistent, and part of what we'll talk about today on how it can help you be long-term consistent. So think about what you want, what you can do to achieve it. Set actions into motion, do those actions, track the results of those actions, and just never stop. That's essentially what I've done with the podcast. The podcast has become a part of my life. It's like brushing my teeth. It's just something I do now. Now, I have missed a few days here or there of the podcast, just like, unfortunately, I've missed a few days of brushing my teeth. It just happens, but overall, I've been pretty consistent. So I wanted to see kind of how consistent. And I looked back and I saw that it has been 1,424 days since my first podcast. 1,424. And I've made 1,378 podcasts. Now, this is supposed to be a daily podcast, so I screwed up. Those numbers aren't equal. It means that I've missed 46 days in 3 years and 11 months. Now, 46 days is only 3.2% of the total days. So I'm getting a score of 96.8% on consistency. And that's not too bad. But I would be lying if I said I wasn't annoyed that I missed 46 days. I'm mad at myself. I'm annoyed. I don't like that. So 46 days is annoying to me that I've missed 46 days. But looking at that percentage, okay, I've only missed 3.2% of the total days. And giving everything that's happened in the last 3 years and 11 months, overall, I can understand. I can forgive myself for missing the 46 days. There's been a lot. I think we've all been through a lot in the last, roughly 4 years. So if you followed along with me at all, you'll know the history of it. And I'm sure that you have your own very challenging history as well. So if we think through, okay, if I tried to do something every single day for the last 4 years, and I only missed 46 days, I'd probably feel pretty damn good about that, right? Now, being consistent with the podcast is actually kind of the same approach I've used to be consistent with my training. I started exercising when I was 15 years old, literally on my 15th birthday. I'm now 38. Ugh. So it's been 23 years. And in the 23 years, the most number of consecutive days that I've gone without a workout has been 7. And I've missed 7 consecutive days twice. Once because of a physical injury and once kind of a mental injury. So depression and kind of anxiety. So I've missed 2 weeks of training out of 1,196 weeks. That's 0.1%. So I'm getting a score of 99.9% consistency of training per week for the last 23 years. That's pretty consistent. So, what has allowed me to be kind of consistent with the podcast, to be consistent with my training? What can allow you to be consistent with whatever you want to be consistent with? There's kind of 3 things that I was thinking through and just kind of wanted to sum up in today's podcast. 3 things that have helped me be more consistent, and I think what they can help you as well. First one is I consider what I want to be consistent with as part of my identity. It's who I am. It's what I do. I train because I believe in the physical benefits, the mental and emotional benefits. I believe it's going to make me a better self. It's going to help me have a better life. I train because the person I want to be would train. I decided who I wanted to be, and then I do what that person would do. So if that person has the choice of, skipping this meal because it's not convenient, or taking 3 minutes to find something in the house to shove in their face so they stay on track, the person I want to be would take the 3 minutes. So I push myself to do that. I push myself to make that choice. If the person I want to be had a crazy busy day, they're at the end of the day, they're dead tired, but they haven't worked out yet today. Well, the person I want to be could do, 5 sets of push-ups and bodyweight squats, and then sit down on the couch. That's what the person I want to be would do. So that's what I do. I think of who I want to become in my life, in the actions and the choices I make, not only with nutrition and training, but with relationships, with finances, with just my ethics, like of who I am. Like if I go to throw something in the trash in a public restroom and say I'm throwing a paper towel away and it hits off the top of the can and falls to the floor, do I walk away? Am I the type of person who just leaves trash on the floor? No. That's not the type of person I am. I don't want to be that person. I'm going to bend over, pick up the paper towel, and put it in the trash can. I'm a person who makes the world around him better. Those around him better. I'm not going to leave trash on the floor because I'm not a trash person. I know who I want to be. So I do as what that person would do. And I'm very passionate about that. And I believe that that is an overwhelming benefit to my life. To know who I want to be and to know that the actions I take, whether anybody sees them or not, will contribute to who that person is. Like if I reach that person. That's a big thing to me. And that's something that I believe can help you with consistency. Do you want to be the person that, for the most part, eats pretty well? You have some, fun foods every now and then. And we've talked a lot in this podcast about how it more so matters how much food you eat and when you eat rather than what you eat. There's nothing wrong with a slice of pizza. There's nothing wrong with some ice cream every now and then. You just can't have pizza all the time, all the days, and ice cream all the time, all the days. You have to have a little bit of discipline, a little bit of understanding of, quality of choices. But there's balance that you can have in life, right? We talk about that in podcast 1232. It's a nutrition podcast titled Start Here. So I know who I want to be. And I know that the only way for me to become that person is to do what that person would do. Therefore, I do what that person would do. That's a big thing. Another thing is I recognize that what I do doesn't have to be perfect. You literally cannot be perfect all the time. It's hard to be perfect some of the time. So you can't be perfect. So holding myself to a standard of perfection to the point of I either do it perfect or I don't do it is absolutely stupid. Stupid. And it's going to hurt me. I can't expect myself to be able to do something that can't be done. I can't expect myself to be perfect because being perfect can't be done. It's also not even necessary. You don't have to be perfect to reach your goals. You know how people reach awesome freaking goals when it comes to like fitness, like getting pro cards in aesthetic sports, getting elite totals, top 50 national rankings in powerlifting, 40 million other things. So I've been very blessed to work with a lot of people. Like on our website, you can go to About Rob. Our website is www.brittlirongym.com. You can go to the About Rob tab and you'll see all the history of the types of clients that I've worked with. So I've worked with a lot of people, and they've achieved some pretty awesome, amazing things. I've worked with professional athletes, Olympic medalists, and none of them were perfect. They made mistakes, but they were just consistent. They were so damn consistent. And they tried to learn from their mistakes, and they tried to, make less and less or not make the same ones. But mistakes happen. You can only do the best with what you know right now. Then we have to go through an experience, and then sometimes we know afterwards, we're like, oh, shit. That wasn't a good idea. But we didn't know ahead of time. I can't know that before I experience it. So sometimes you just try stuff. And it was of none of your doing that it didn't work out. It had nothing to do with you not being smart enough or good enough. Or there was nothing like personal. You had the information you had. You then tried it and went, oh, shit. I learned something that I didn't know beforehand. So you're not going to be perfect. It's impossible to set yourself with a belief that I either have to be perfect or I can't do it, or I'm going to quit. Well, I'm either going to follow this diet perfect or I might as well not even diet at all. Bullshit. You just don't want to diet then. You just don't want to do it, so you're like, okay, well, I'll set some standards that are impossible to meet so I can just quit. That might be a subconscious thing that's happening. Might even be conscious. But why do you think you think that perfection is necessary? I don't know anyone that's perfect. And I know a lot of people. I know a lot of really good and very successful people. And they're not perfect. Maybe that's part of why I was able to let go of perfection, because as I've worked with more and more people, I've worked with thousands of people. So I started training people for money when I was 18 years old. I'm well over 3,000 clients, like one-on-one, know their name, know about their life, kind of know the mistakes they've made. Well over 3,000 clients. And I don't know anyone in the 3,000 people that I've worked with that have been perfect. Zero. I'm certainly not perfect. Oof. It's not possible, and it's not necessary. I've seen people achieve amazing things while making mistakes, and that's okay. That happens. They just learn, they adjust, and they try not to make the same mistake again. So allowing yourself to be imperfect is very important. Third thing is you want to set what you want as a priority and account for it. You have to value it above most other things. So my training is very important to me. I have lost money so I could work out. I've had days where I have felt insanely stressed for days in a row where I was just, kind of like beating me up, getting crazy, getting frustrated, angry, worn out, like emotional. And I'm like, you know what? I can't do it today. I'm just going to call in sick. I'm going to cancel some training sessions. I'm going to cancel work. I'm just going to go work out. Because I knew that I needed to work out. I needed to do something for myself. I needed to value myself. So there was something of me to give to other people. I've canceled training sessions with clients. I'm sorry to tell you that now. But I've canceled training sessions with clients so I could work out. Because my workout is more important to me than money. I do this podcast even though net I lose money. Because I believe in the value of it. Now, I have been blessed through doing this podcast. And I hope that it's been a blessing to a lot of people's lives as well. So I will do the podcast even if it means I make less money. Because it matches the person I want to be. It matches the purpose I want to have. So I'll pass up money. And most people don't pass up money. That's why I'm kind of referencing money. Is a lot of people value money more than they value the things that they think they value, such as your exercise, your training, doing something that you feel like is towards your purpose, which for me is the podcast. So I've been able to be consistent with these things because I value them over money. Do you? What do you want to be consistent at? What do you continue to choose over it? So I'll lose money to do my workouts if I need to do the podcast. But I won't lose my relationship. I won't lose my relationship with my wife or my family. I've told my wife that when I decided to start dating, when I decided that I would date towards the purpose of getting married, when I decided that I would get married, that I was going to put that person ahead of my business. I love what I do, and I do believe that God equipped me to do this well. So I do believe it's my purpose. But if I'm going to commit to another person, to sharing my life with them, to be the person that they are going to share their life with, commit their life to, I wanted to make that equal commitment. So I knew that I would put the business behind my wife. I was going to always put my wife first. And I've been able to do that. I check in with my wife actually pretty regularly to ask her if she always feels like she's more important than the business. And thankfully she says yes. So there has been times where I've had to adjust what I do training-wise, adjust what I do with the podcast, adjust what I do with work to balance that. We've been through a lot. Through all of 2020, my wife's mother also had a stroke. We had to move her from New Jersey down to South Carolina, do a lot of work to help with that. I've had to transition my business quite a bit, and there's just been enormous amounts of changes that have happened in the 3 years I've known my wife, and I am insanely, incredibly, beyond words blessed to have met her and married her. So I'm happy to have made all of the changes, but the changes weren't easy to make. But I knew that the person I wanted to be, the person I told her that I would be, that I committed to being, would always put her first. So I have had to adjust what I do with my training and adjust what I do with the podcast. So what you want to be consistent with, you have to set it as a priority so that way you can be consistent with it. Know where it ranks. Who or what ranks above it So therefore you have to shift it around and find balance with it. But then who or what ranks below it? And sometimes you have to say no. I say no a lot more than I want to. It stinks. I don't like it. I don't like saying no. I don't think I'm ever going to get used to saying no. But that is the position I'm in, that sometimes I have to say no in order to say yes to the things that are more important and more impactful to the future I want to have, and the future, like that includes like my relationships and business and finances and everything. So I know where I want my life to go. I know who I want to be. So therefore I have to say yes to what leads towards that, which then doesn't leave time and energy and resources to all say yes to everything else. So how you can improve long-term consistency is to decide who you want to be and act as that person would act. Recognize that what you do to work towards your goals doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be done. You just have to do it. Do it to some degree, in some way, as often as you can. Doesn't have to be perfect. Just do it. And then you have to plan your life around what is important to you and say no to things that compete with that but are less important. So decide who you want to be, act as that person would act. Put in effort as often as you possibly can, regardless of whether it's perfect or not. Just put in effort. Just do something. And then plan for what you want. Account for it with your day, with your time, your energy, your resources. You have to say yes to it by saying no to other things. You can be more consistent if you decide to be. It's just a matter of making the right decisions. And you do have control over that. I wish you the best of luck in whatever your goals are. I appreciate every single person who has listened to this podcast. I appreciate each individual one of the 200,000 downloads. I really appreciate it. Thank you for helping me live an amazing and blessed life, and I hope that this podcast is helping you do the same. Cool. Well, if you like today's podcast or the podcast in general, please consider sharing it. The more people we share it with, just the more people we're able to help. So you can share it on social media. You can share it in a conversation with a friend. Just appreciate it that if you do share it, I thank you very much. The whole goal is just to help people live their healthiest and happiest lives, and the only way we can do that is if they're listening. So thank you. Thank you to the patrons of the podcast, the people who financially support the podcast. The podcast is well over $1,000 a year to host. I give an hour to it every single day. 96.8% of the days. But I do my best. And I would love to keep it for free, keep it on a daily basis. So thank you to the patrons that allow us to do that. You can give donations on our website, www.brutalirongym.com. You can do a one-time donation, monthly donation, yearly donation. Anything you do is very appreciated. Thank you very, very much. If you like the information we share in our podcast, you can always find more from us on our social media channels on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube under the name Brutal Iron Gym. If you have any questions, feedback, suggestions, anything that you want to know, let us know at our email, brutalirongym@gmail.com. As always, I hope this was helpful, and thank you for listening.